Welcome to the Make Sense with Dr. JC podcast. This podcast covers topics that expand human consciousness and performance. On the Make Sense podcast, we acknowledge that it's who you are that determines how well what you do works, and that perception is a subjective and acquired taste. When you change the way that you look at things, the things that you look at begin to change. The Make Sense podcast is sponsored and primarily funded by the Make Sense Academy, our private community where open and curious seekers of growth and expansion apply the Make Sense principles and systems to move from simply going through life to growing through life. So check out the Make Sense Academy risk-free for less than you'll spend today on shit that you don't need. Welcome, my friends, to the uprising of the sleepwalking masses. Welcome to the Make Sense with Dr. JC Doornick podcast.
Makes sense.
Great morning, world! Welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon podcast with your host, Dragon!
Great morning to all of you that would like this day to be great. This is your boy Dragon coming at you, looking to make sense of some more interesting things to help us get our focus and create this day the way we'd like it to unfold. So, this whole process that I go through every day, that I encourage so many others to go through, I call it the Rise Up. And it's just this process of taking advantage of the morning, and from that morning when we go from unconscious to conscious and open our eyes. It's just such a vulnerable, sensitive time, but it's also such valuable real estate that we can take advantage of and set the tone, create our day. I'm just very fascinated with it. And I came up with this Rise Up theme for the day, which was created right there. I want everybody to understand that human beings have this ability to move from not knowing something to knowing something if they just take a leap of faith and go through a process. So this process that I call the Rise Up, from the moment I open my eyes and just start off in a place of gratitude just by saying something as simple as thank you. Thank you is something you do not have to put a lot of thought into, because there's so many things, just like a beating heart, some lungs that are breathing, the person laying next to you. Well, I hope that you can say thank you like I do when I wake up and give my chicken a kiss. But gratitude's a great place to start. And then you'll notice that as you start to move further from unconscious to conscious, you'll come up with some greater ideas. So I came up this morning in this process as I started to go through the motions, and I drank some water, and I sat and I read some things and I listened to some things, and boom, it just popped into my head, this idea of butt power. Really, really cool. And one thing that's important for everybody to understand is there's no new information out there. I like to consider myself a translator, meaning I will go learn something and interpret it in my own ways. And then I feel that one of my superpowers that I was gifted with, and I think that we all have them, and unfortunately we shelf them most of our lives. I like to take things that make sense to me, and I go through my own process to make sense of them. And in one way, shape, or form, you'll get that from my book when it comes out. But I love to translate those things as if I'm taking a language that you don't speak and delivering it through a medium like this podcast. So butt power was something that I actually heard come out of the mouth of this amazing man who's pretty much leading the field of the string theory. This guy's taking something that Albert Einstein started and didn't finish. And his name is Michio Kaku. I think that is the way you pronounce his name. But he's just basically an extraterrestrial genius of a human. So I heard him use this term butt power. So I've been really into, and if you've been listening to my podcast, reading my blog, you can see that I'm very fascinated with the difference between subconscious and conscious mind. So we've been chatting a lot about the fact that the subconscious mind represents about 95% of our thought process each day. It's running on autopilot. That poses a challenge, but it also unveils a potential. So naturally, if 95% is on autopilot subconsciously, meaning it's happening without us actually being in control of it, that means that we're only left with about 5%, which we can call our conscious state. So when I'm doing my rise up in the morning, I'm actually deciding to do that. That's not just happening those 10 seconds that you'll be driving your car and just say, was I looking at the road? So would you be interested in tapping into this idea of being more in control of what happens in the 95%? Because I sure am. The way I look at it is as if my 95% subconscious is there. It was created by things like concepts or, my youth and things that I've heard. I was basically trained to think and believe and act a certain way in accordance with my day. And that created that 95%. So the 95% is in essence like a symptom of my program. I've been really into this idea of rewiring my program, which is done within the 5%. So then the 95% will follow suit and create, I guess, what you could call a new normal. Here are some cool ideas that I pulled from this morning and I want to share with you today to help maybe awaken or fire off some new synapses and begin the process of rewiring your brain. But here's a cool idea. Animals live in the present moment. Here's what I mean by that. Try to teach a dog about the concept of yesterday or tomorrow. You can't, right? Humans constantly live in this amazing world that doesn't exist. Think about that for a second. Our minds are always in the past, which no longer exists. It actually doesn't exist anymore. It's just something that you'll call a memory. And unfortunately, we take it with us too much. Or they live in the future, which doesn't exist unless you have this amazing power to predict the future. So it's pretty cool how we can live in those worlds. But your dog, he lives in one place. And it actually exists. It's called the present. So how can we tap into this superpower we possess? Because we're getting into all of these conversations about living in the past is no good and don't dream about the future. Humans are always trying to live like animals and live in the present. But the fact is that we don't. We spend most of our time in that 95%. It's affected by the past and the future. So once again, how can we tap into this superpower that we possess as humans and also refrain from having it be a detriment to us? There's an upside and a downside. For one thing, we must learn that the past no longer serves us. I mean, if you really logically sit down, nothing in the past really serves where you want to go. And like a dog, we just need to learn how to forget about it. I mean, I always crack up when I look at my dog, and he might have some trauma or something like that, but he doesn't remember what it's from. I don't think so. So be like a dog and just cut the string from your past. Now, in regards to the future, we know that the human brain, this is really fascinating, and if you really want to get into this, listen to Joe Dispenza talk, but we know that the human brain doesn't actually know the difference between something that it sees in your mind in the future as a reality. Sometimes I can actually see myself doing certain things to the point where I can feel it. So the human mind doesn't know the difference between something that it can see and feel in the future and something that actually is happening in the present. So that's pretty cool, right? So if we take advantage of that, and start to harness some of that power, we can actually start to change the 95% and therefore change the future. Because if you can change what you're doing 95% of your day, that's going to have an impact. So the challenge that we face is that our minds, with no focused practice, get distracted. That's the big word, distraction. And we can't sit in one place and direct our minds to focus on learning or thinking or visualizing on one thing without getting distracted. So in other words, and this is what Michio Kaku referred to as, we lack butt power. And I think that's a really funny way of looking at it. As humans, we lack the power of sitting in one place and focusing on one thing. Because if we did, we would start to train and rewire our minds. So butt power meaning focused time learning, like reading a book or meditating on one thing that is in support of our goals, dreams, and desires. So back to that 95% and 5% ratio. If we learn how to improve and work on our butt power, even if you can have 5 minutes more of butt power, that would have a massive impact, because what you're doing in that butt power, that's your 5%. If you sit down and actually focus and read and learn and meditate and things like that, you're working within that 5%. In fact, I would even say it's so abnormal to do this. If you do things like meditation and you do like a rise up like I do, I'd say that 5% expands to 6 or 7%. So now you're winning the game. So doing things like reading, meditating, can you see how we can gain access to the 95% or impact the 95% thought process, changing it to be subconsciously in support of our dreams and desires? So in effect, like I said before, create a new normal. All of a sudden, are you with me in seeing that we actually can control and rewire and reprogram our brains to create a new reality? Because if we start changing that 95% and we're thinking differently and we're seeing things differently and we're reacting to things differently and we're caring less about things that don't matter and more about things that do, right? And maybe even robotically, automatically, subconsciously thinking positive thoughts and eating healthy and nourishing our body and drinking water, all from practicing it within that conscious 5%, we can actually change our future. So here's my suggestion today. It's just an encouraging offer, an opportunity for you to join me and work on your butt power today and make better use of that sliver of time that you have in your day to create your future reality. Now, I use the very, very early morning. I don't know about you, but my day is packed full of things and responsibilities that I have as a father, as a fiance, as a son. There's a lot of things that occupy my day. So I needed to find some time early morning, late at night where I could work on my butt power. So the rise up process that I've explained over and over and over is that for me. I've identified the most powerful butt time that we can tap into is that time right first thing in the morning. In my opinion, it's the most impressionable time that we have, both due to the fact that you've just moved from unconscious to conscious. I love to just look at my life as a piece of soft clay that I can begin to sculpt into the exact form that I want it to be. And I can take advantage of creating my day the way I want to and tap into things like focus, vibration, and energies that can create a theme for the day. I mean, I'm sharing with you right now a theme that came from my butt time. I spent some butt time this morning focusing and creating a vibration and creating a theme, which just think about the fact that the past 10 minutes that I've been with you, I've been practicing this theme. I've been regurgitating it to you. I've been reading some of the things that I wrote down during my butt time. But in effect, what I'm doing is I'm rewiring my brain in this 5%. I'm still in the 5% of my day. Who knows what's about to happen? But my subconscious, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, is beginning to follow suit. I'm starting to believe a lot of these concepts that I'm creating with my 5%. So here's my last statement. This is coming to you. October 7th is when I'm recording it. Don't know when it'll come live on the podcast, but there's 3 months left in 2019. Just entertain the idea of taking some of these principles that are so easy, complex, but easy to just start practicing. And let's finish strong together and send a message to 2020 and show it what's popping, right? Who's up for showing 2020 what it can expect from us? Think about what we could accomplish just in 3 months of focused butt time. So that's my rise up today. Have a wonderfully great morning. And then just lastly, remember, if you've learned something today, hey, take it and put it into play. And then take that and give it away. And that's the way it's going to stay. Have a great morning.